This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Kimball with the United Way. I'm the Director for Analytics and Performance. And so today I'm just going to be sharing a little bit with you about the scoring and the one-year investment update, just getting a little bit more in depth. I guess first of all, just want to say thank you for joining us in the community investment review process overall. We really appreciate your time in this process, especially among these dynamic and changing community circumstances. We know that it's going to look a little bit different, but just as always, your involvement is really vital through this process to make sure that our investments are being targeted to where they're needed most in the community. I know Matt and Gabby sent some updates as well. So this is really about getting a little bit deeper look into the process as we move forward together over the next few weeks. So we'll go over a little bit of the current situation, kind of what we've heard from agencies, but really dig deep into the process. Talk about the priorities, being transparent about some of the challenges that we're going to face as we walk through this together. Talk about what's different, what's the same if you've done this before, but then really focus a little bit on the evaluation and the questionnaire that you all will be scoring, because it's a little bit different than what you've seen in the past if you've done this. So let's start about what we've seen from area nonprofits. The current situation, this is from the Nonprofit Association of the Midlands. They did a survey of area philanthropic organizations, and what you see here is probably reflective of what you're experiencing at your own business. Temporarily closed offices, some programs are suspended. Other programs have actually, though, shifted their focus to meet either increased demand or to meet their clients where they are, right? We have after school or student level programming that may not be operating in its traditional sense, but they're still doing Zoom, or they're reaching out to check on families to understand what their needs are and connect them to resources. Observing social distancing is something we are all trying to do. There's also concern in the philanthropic community with both short-term and long-term funding, given the economic uncertainty. But in times of need, the nonprofit sector is doing what it always does, pulling together to serve the community's best interests. And so that's really been inspiring to see that play out in across different areas of our investment pool. So our one-year, investment priorities, and I know Matt and Gabby showed a little bit about this, but really it's about being responsive to community needs, and a one-year process gives us more flexibility to do that. You will see throughout the process us talking about the importance of essential services and services that stabilize individuals and families. And that's really a priority that we've set through this one-year process. As always, your input is vital, especially now more than ever. We need everyone's best thinking to the table to help us understand how to invest in these changing and dynamic community circumstances. This decision to go to a one-year process was not made lightly. It was approved by the United Way Board of Directors after conversations with agency leaders, and we've had ongoing conversations with agency leaders to help them be aware of this new process and kind of what that means. We've asked them to complete a questionnaire to tell us a little bit about their response to COVID-19, what that's meant for their program and for their organization and for their funding, as well as giving them an opportunity to change their request in terms of, if they need to change any part of their request, given the changing circumstances, or if they want to make any amendments to that based on this dynamic situation. As always, volunteers will evaluate, and staff are also going to be important in this process as well to understand sort of the full picture. And then the decision making over the next few weeks. We'll be meeting in individual teams, and then funding will begin July 1st and last 1 year through June 30th. One slight change is that We know that given the uncertainty of funding, that things are going to evolve over time over this next year. So while our focus for the next few weeks together is going to be really making those decisions for June 1st funding, there will be ongoing waves of investments throughout the year that we'll be making as this situation evolves. But again, the focus for your work over the next few weeks is scoring and thinking about July 1st funding. So some of the challenges and limitations, really want to be transparent about this because we know that this is a unique circumstance for everyone. So one of the things that we know is that we've heard from our agencies is that program activities are going to evolve over time. And again, that touches to that sort of ongoing waves of funding. But we also know that needs are varying, right? Some programs are seeing a high level increase in demand. Others are suspending their programs or shifting their focus. And so that's just going to be a very fluid and dynamic situation over the next year. But you're also going to see that reflected in the questionnaires as folks talk about different ways of serving their target population. And that's going to present a challenge for us to sort of understand what those essential services are and what's really going to help stabilize families over the next year. We know that in this circumstance, everybody's wearing a lot of hats. As a volunteer, you're wearing many hats, working from home, probably homeschooling some kiddos, and doing a lot of other things. And so we really appreciate your time, especially now. The agency staff, they also have time demands as they work through partnerships and other challenges that they're facing to serve their clients and continue that important work for vulnerable populations in our community. Everyone is social distancing, so that obviously poses a challenge and a limitation to us meeting together as a group. So we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in terms of GoToMeeting and things like that. But overall, just want to reiterate that technology is our friend right now, so we want to be as flexible as possible. And recognize that technology has its own quirks sometimes. So just appreciate your flexibility as we work through some of those challenges. As you saw from the NAM survey and really across the community, whether it's nonprofit, business, government sector, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so we want to just call that out as known and recognize that and make the best decision that we can with the information that we have and just take one step at a time. That's another reason why we have sort of the waves of funding planned into our 1-year cycle. So really want to focus here on what remains the same. If you've done a volunteer cert process with us before, there's still some structures that we want to have in place just to continue to make this due diligence happen and important for our community. So volunteers, we're going to ask you to score a questionnaire that really gives the agencies a chance to share about their response to COVID-19 and also, again, any changes that they want to make to their original application. If a program did not submit a questionnaire, you'll be provided their original RFP. Please do read that to inform discussion. But you will only be scoring that questionnaire piece. As with previous years, each volunteer team will receive a budget for each area of funding, right? So if you're on the food team, you'll receive a max amount to invest and be asked to invest that across the programs. Your recommendations will be provided to the board of directors for final approval, and we are funding at the program level. So that all remains the same. You're going to be divided into teams, recommending funding levels, etc. What's different? Obviously, with social distancing, volunteer meetings will be remote. So we're going to use things like the chat function. We're going to be sort of tightly facilitating meetings and asking you to use technology to engage. And so that's going to be different and a challenge. A single volunteer team meeting will determine funding. So rather than have multiple phases of volunteer meetings, we're going to do it all at once in one meeting. as well, we're prioritizing sort of those essential services and COVID-19 responses. So that's different than maybe what we've seen before. There is a shorter questionnaire than the full RFP. The questionnaire that you guys will be evaluating is less than 10 questions. And again, focuses on that essential service piece and the COVID-19 response. There are going to be more questionnaires probably for you to review than you have had in the past, right? In the past, you might have been reviewing 6 to 10. That has increased this year just based on the number of volunteers that we have and the fact that the questionnaire is shorter. We have some combined teams, so that's somewhat different. So instead of just focusing on food or just focusing on employment, you might be reading employment and education, or different functions of employment, right? You might be reading readiness and retention sort of questionnaires, and those will be facilitated separately in terms of, you might have a 3-hour meeting and you'll spend 1 hour focused on readiness and 1 hour focused on retention. Not all of you will be on those combined teams, but some of you will be. So that will vary a little bit, but again, there's only going to be one meeting per team, but some of those teams have sort of been combined, if you will, based on the funds available and just the number of applications or questionnaires. And because of, as with previous years, there is more requests than there is dollars available. This year particularly, we want to just stress that there must be some programs that you review and grade or score that are not going to be funded. And so we want to give you that permission up front to say and identify what those programs might be that do not get funded in this first sort of July wave. That's not to say that they might not be funded in the fall or in the wintertime or next spring, but there will be a necessity for some programs not to receive funding just because of the amount that we have to invest. Staff will come with some recommendations as well, but we invite you to think about that as you're scoring and as you're thinking about the programs that you're reviewing. So on to evaluation, and this is where we're going to spend a little bit more time in getting a little bit deeper into the questionnaire that you guys are going to be evaluating from. So the goal of the questionnaire is really, and your evaluation of it, is really to assess the organization's program in response to the COVID-19 situation. For programs without a questionnaire, like I mentioned before, you will receive an attached PDF to read that original program application, and that'll be really helpful just for discussion and context. If they did not submit a questionnaire, that doesn't mean that they're not eligible for funding. It simply means that they, are still doing the work of their original RFP, or they stand by their original RFP and really want to focus on that work. The original application, while it's not necessarily going to be scored with the questionnaire, we're going to discuss it. We're going to discuss additional contextual factors, just like we always do. The decision-making process is comprised of many different elements. Scores are just one starting point that give us a little bit of structure and give us a good starting point, frankly, to sort of launch that discussion and sort of understand where we all are in the process. Scores are not the end-all, be-all, and you'll hear me say that quite a bit. The staff is also reviewing the original applications, the questionnaire, and considering the full picture of the community as they read and review as well, and will be great facilitators and guides through this process for you. Here it is again. Scores are one component of the overall decision-making process. Just really kind of want to hammer that home as we begin to look at the rubric. So similar to previous rubrics in years past, and even the previous webinar that I recorded, you'll see an evaluation question. The question here is the question that the agencies were asked to respond to, and then the evaluation question sort of underneath it that you'll be asked to rate on a scale of 0 to 4, strongly disagree to strongly agree. So if you've read, or if you've had any survey in the past, you're familiar with sort of this scale. And what I'll say here is that an agree statement is really for someone that sort of hits the mark, right? You understand clearly what they're trying to do, and it makes sense and is logical. For someone to get a strongly agree, it's really they kind of hit it out of the park, right? they made you super confident and you feel very strongly in this investment. Anything beyond that is probably, in a lower rating. So for this question, we're asking, we're asking the programs to describe how they've adjusted program services in response to COVID-19. And we're asking you to understand how they made thoughtful and reasonable adjustments to the activities. Underneath each rating, you'll see some indicators, right? So you'll pick strongly disagree if there's no evidence of deliberation in making program adjustments. Now, just because if a program has not made any adjustments, that's okay. They can still get an agree, but they need to sort of describe why. If they haven't made any adjustments, why not? What factors are driving that? And if you feel confident that they've provided adequate justification, rate them an agree. Strongly disagree is really if they've made no strong or thoughtful deliberation and don't really have a thought process about why they're not making any changes, right? I would suspect that probably no one's going to be in that strongly disagree category for this question. And then you can see that an agree is a program that's made sort of a logical response, and a strongly agree, has are critical and some of those essential services and provided leadership in providing some of these activities to the community. So that's sort of the overall structure using this example. Going to run through a few more examples just to kind of hammer it home. So this question, we're asking the programs to describe the program. Again, in some cases, they're going to be combining programs into one. In some cases, they are significantly changing the program because they need to reach their target population in different ways, and they can't do it in their building, or maybe they're doing telehealth, or again, they're reaching out to their target population and connecting them with services when they're doing more case management at the family level. So we're asking the programs to really tell us what their program is and how it's changed a little bit. And your question here is does the program demonstrate a depth of understanding regarding the target population and the conditions faced, right? Have they adjusted their program to meet those needs? And what is the program that doesn't meet those needs? So here you have, again, strongly disagree to strongly agree. You're going to pick strongly agree if there's compelling data, anecdotes and client input to sort of share that they are responding, they understand the client need, and they're responding to it. And especially if they've demonstrated leadership in understanding and responding to that target population. So same question, but a different evaluation piece. So we didn't want to ask the programs a bunch of different questions. They got a lot of work to do already, and they're very busy. So here you'll see that what we've done is sort of use the same question to the program, but ask you multiple evaluation questions based on their responses. So in this case, again, you'll be reading that program description, but you'll look at the activities and you'll think to yourself, are these really a core community service? Are these essential services that stabilize families? And you'll want to rate that again from strongly disagree to strongly agree using those indicators. Now here I just want to note, and this is true for all the questions, that those indicators are merely a guide, right? It will give you a clue or some clues as to what to look for and how to sort of make your decision. At the end of the day, though, you guys trust your gut. We trust you to make these good decisions. That's why you're here in this process, is because of your best thinking. So again, the guide is, if they hit the mark, it's agree. But if they really hit it out of the park and you feel very strongly about this program and this investment, give it that strongly agree. And then anything beyond that should be sort of a strongly disagree to the neutral category if you're sort of wavering, right? This is a competitive process, and so we just want to make sure that we're thinking really critically about this. But don't overthink those indicators. Really kind of use your gut and trust your gut. So these are some additional questions that you'll be asked to rate. Again, there'll be a question from the application, and then an evaluation question. And in some cases, again, these are combined, right? So there might be the same questionnaire the same question within the questionnaire, you're asked to evaluate in a few different ways, similar to that program description. That's probably the most common one. The program description, you're gonna have a lot of evaluation questions based on that description. The program activities represent a clear and manageable focus. So really for that one, you're looking at, did they bite off more they can chew? Can they really execute this program? Though there's questions about the evolution of the program, and do they have a plan or process for doing so? Do they have a strategy, right? This isn't necessarily to say that they know that on February 15th of 2021 that they're going to do X, Y, or Z, or in September they're going to move to in-person meetings, right? There's no way that anyone's going to know that, right? This is way too uncertainty. And there's way too much uncertainty to sort of make those statements. But do they have a general timeline or sense of how they will evolve it, what their process will be, right? That when the CDC makes this decision, they're going to do this, that they need to engage their board at this point in the process to make sure that they approve before they make a decision. What's their overall strategy? Are they thinking they're going to go, from telehealth direct to in-person? Are they going to keep doing telehealth even after the CDC has recommended? And some of that stuff they might not know, but the sense is that you're trying to evaluate is, do they have a strategy for how they're going to move forward, engaging both their target population, their board, their partners, right? Just sort of an overall sense of where are they in their thinking, and have they even thought about that? In some cases, that may be a challenge as well. So make your best judgment about whether they have a strategy for evolving the program here. So this piece about the provided evidence of their ability to provide this community service, that's sort of an overall evaluation of just your confidence level in the program and in its execution. Then we move to some financial questions. Those last three questions are really based on the budget. And so you'll want to just see, is the investment amount requested, is it reasonable and logical for the activities and the client served, right? Is the ask reasonable? The next question is just, given the limited resources, does this investment represent the best of what our community needs, right? So this is sort of a question, again, in your gut, given limited resources, what, do you feel like this investment is the most important of what our community needs? If you do, rate them agree, strongly agree. And then the last question is about sustainability. And we've asked programs to share, recognizing the financial uncertainty, what sort of risk adjustments have they made to their financial situation to remain sustainable and to make sure that this program can continue for its target population, given the unknown financial circumstances. So again, your focus is really here on the program activities and the community need and how those two things are aligned, as well as their financial stewardship. So we're not focusing here on logic models and evaluation and measurement and tracking, right? This is really, as a volunteer, you're really looking at how this organization and how this program is responding to the current situation, whether they've thought about the future, whether they've thought about the financial uncertainty and made some plans to do that, while also adjusting their program as necessary to meet the needs of their target population. That's really what you're looking at in your evaluation and with these rubrics and questions. So the indicators, again, they're just a guide. Really go with your gut, and we trust your judgment on making these scoring ratings. In addition to the scores, there are some reflection questions. These reflection questions are not scored. It's going to help us as staff get an idea of where you guys are on some of these programs, what your thoughts are, to help us have a stronger facilitated session when we meet via GoToMeeting or Zoom in the future. So what we're asking you to do is first pick one if the services provided are essential priorities, moderate priorities, or sort of lower priority activities, right? This will help give us a sense of whether we should focus for them on July funding or move them later on into the process. And it'll give us a sense overall of where your guys' feeling is on that and help us move the discussion forward. Again, essential priorities, stabilizing families and individuals, moderate priorities, sort of provide some stability, but also some quality of life, and low priority activities. These are all, important programs, right? So we're just asking you to help us prioritize within, an already important category. Then with the reflection questions, we're asking for some especially compelling reasons to invest in this program, as well as any concerns or red flags you might have. And again, these notes are not going to be shared, beyond our staff. They're really designed to help us facilitate the meeting and sort of understand what concerns you have and what reasons you have that are really compelling you to score these programs highly, so we can facilitate good dialogue. So the meetings are actually 3 hours. I'm sorry, that's incorrect there. But during our time together, you will see the scores. Instead of a sheer number, there'll be a percent, and the percent will represent confidence, and it'll represent from 0 to sort of 10 or 100% of high confidence. And you'll see where each program lies on that spectrum. And again, scores are just one component of decision making. So for that first star, they scored at roughly a 90% high confidence. The second program is somewhere, in the 60s, probably based on where their star is. And so you'll just have an opportunity to discuss, why did one program rate higher than the other? And that will help flush out whether they should be invested at all, because again, there are some programs that won't receive an investment, and B, to what level should they be invested in given the limited funds available. Scores are just that first conversation. You guys will now talk about contextual factors, original applications, and other, information that you need to make a good decision. But the scores are just the starting off point. So please do, as you read the questionnaire, use that questionnaire solely to make your ratings. Don't use any outside information. The outside information really comes into play when we have that discussion. If at any point during the process you have questions or need support, you can reach out to Gabby, or general questions or community investment, or of course your individual director, depending on what team you are on or assigned to. Gabby will be sending an email shortly with that information, as well as any PDFs that you might need. Your scoring will happen in EC Impact, so if you have questions of that, please do reach out. We are here to facilitate this process, and we know that the time is precious. So please don't hesitate to give us a call if it means saving yourself a few minutes of fighting with technology. We all do it sometimes. So just want to say we appreciate your time and are here to answer any questions or help address any concerns that you might have through this process. We very much look forward to spending time with you in the next few weeks, to having these critical discussions, and really to investing in a portfolio that is responding to the critical needs of our community right now. Your voice is so crucial to that process, and so we appreciate the time that you're going to spend reading alone these questionnaires, and also the time that you're going to spend collectively in discussion in recommending these investments for our community. Again, thank you so much for your time, and please do not hesitate to call us with any questions that you might have. Stay healthy, stay strong, and we will see you in a few weeks. Bye.
This conference will now be recorded.